What up, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Today we have Coach Luke Becker, who was a very accomplished college wrestler, high school wrestler, wrestler in his own right, and then he's become a very accomplished wrestling coach at the University of Minnesota. And again, we're going to jump into this podcast here in a second, and we're going to get into him talking about both his wrestling career and also coaching. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about this podcast or talking to him was, even though the sports are different, they're kind of cousin sports, right? Like wrestling and jiu-jitsu, they're almost like related. And there's so many similarities. Like there's a lot of things that he touches on and talks about in his own words that we've had so many high-level world champions, myself, others, talk about in relation to jiu-jitsu. He even talks about how they train, their types of practices, how they do techniques, how they do live drilling, all that stuff. The stuff that I think is interesting because, you're talking about a sport that's a bit more developed than jiu-jitsu, right? Because it's had more money, more funding pouring into it for a longer period of time. And so, wrestling in America is far more developed, so they say, than jiu-jitsu in America. Jiu-jitsu is coming a long way and everything's good and great. But as far as the training, sort of the way that we train, it's coming a long way, and we've made a lot of progress, but especially in the last few years. But again, you get to hear how they talk about training, and some of it's going to seem very similar to you guys who are in gyms that do a lot of the same stuff. And then some of you guys, maybe you're listening to this and maybe be a little bit different. But anyway, cool stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoy the podcast and are able to take a couple ideas away for your grappling, for your jiu-jitsu, because obviously he's talking about wrestling in the sense, but everything that he talks about, you could pretty much replace it with jiu-jitsu, and a lot of it would still make sense, minus the very collegiate focused stuff. But as far as the actual training goes, and the mindset stuff goes, all could be the same. So guys, with that said, thanks for being here. A big thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Grapple Science, grapplescience.com is the website. If you guys haven't checked their stuff out, they make a supplement called Cognition, and Cognition is a non-stimulant based supplement that is there to help support focus. I was trying to figure out how I wanted to word that in my own ways. Again, I tried the supplement for about a month, and I definitely felt a difference. And, like when I'm doing seminars and things like that, or teaching a lot, or if I just want to be a little bit more dialed in during my training, I like taking the supplement. Again, there's no jitters. You can have it, and with your coffee, there's no problem whatsoever. You're not going to feel on edge, or, it's not like if you take a pre-workout supplement, you're going to be all jittery and messed up. I personally don't deal well with too much caffeine, and I'm very sensitive to like stimulants. And so this one was perfect because I remember like when we got it, I was like, there's nothing in here that's going to make me feel like edgy. Right. And again, it's been a really good supplement. I like it. That's why they're a sponsor here. We used it for about a month before we decided to go ahead with them. And if you guys want to check them out, go to grapplescience.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu20 to save 20% off the order with their supplement of Cognition. It comes in these little packets where, again, it's like one dose per packet, and you can take them with you wherever you want, throw them in your gym bag, if you got to travel, whatever. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Charlotte's Web. Again, they've been a long-time sponsor. I'm sure you guys, if you're long-time listeners to the podcast, have heard about them. But in case you're new here, again, they are a CBD company. They're one of the premier CBD companies out there. They produce a very well-developed product, a product that's third-party tested to ensure the purity and the quality of it. And they make a wide array of products for different things. They make everything from balms that, obviously you can use on your muscles, to supplements that are there to support sleep, to support focus, whatever it is that you're looking to get from it. Personally, my sort of benefit from CBD comes with sleep. It's where I seem to get the most bang for my buck with it. So I like to use it to help support my sleep cycles. Again, sleep is one of the most important things that you can do for recovery. It's something like we talk about on the podcast here in just a bit with Luke, where, talking about you don't want to be distracted by doing things that are going to mess up your sleep if you're trying to be the best wrestler you can be. And for us in jiu-jitsu, a lot of us obviously are very casual in our training methods in comparison to, like, say, a college or Olympic athlete. But at the same time, we all want to get the most from ourselves. And so sleep is one of those things where it's crucial. Whether you're trying to be focused at work, trying to get the most from your training, you need the rest. And so I like using CBD supplements to help support that. I feel like I get a benefit from it. And so I feel comfortable sharing the supplements with you guys and sharing Charlotte's Web with you guys. If you haven't checked them out, or if you want to get the stuff, you can go to charlottesweb.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. Also, guys, if you want to check out some new jiu-jitsu gear, maybe get some rash guards, shorts, t-shirts, gis, whatever you're looking for, check out Epic Roll. The website is epicrollbjj.com. When you go on there, take a look at the area of stuff that they have in the shop, and you can see what kind of stuff you might be interested in. Has a lot of cool t-shirt designs. The no-gi gear is great quality stuff. I really like the shorts that he has. They don't have the Velcro straps that a lot of times they get caught up in your laundry. They start to lose the stickiness to them. And then you're left with a pair of shorts that are not shredded, but you can't wear them because the Velcro is gone. And so again, if you want to check out their stuff, go to epicrollbjj.com, and then the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys want to support the podcast directly and get access to some other perks that we don't offer anywhere else, see some videos and content we don't release anywhere else, you can get access to it by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast for a very inexpensive price. You then get access to the library of content, some back-end perks that we give to the people, like a ad-free version of this podcast, as well as videos that are released a little bit earlier there. You also get access to a library that has things like warm-up drills or warm-up movements specifically for jiu-jitsu, as well as seminars and recordings, things of that nature. So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Last but not least, guys, if you want to join my daily email and get access to the Focus Jiu-Jitsu ebook, which goes through 12 strategies to add focus to your open rolling, then you can do so by going to my website at jiujitsu.net/join. When you listen to this podcast and listen to Luke, you'll hear him talk about the idea of sparring, which we word it differently in jiu-jitsu, but the idea of sparring and doing this positional stuff. If your gym does not do those types of things already, then the stuff that I have in the Focus Jiu-Jitsu ebook can be very helpful to you to basically create those kinds of conditions through your open rolling where you don't have any control. It's a really good, it's a good intentional way to train to get the most from your training. Because again, most of us aren't training 5, 6, 7 days a week. So it's a way to wring out a little extra progress from it, a little extra skill from your training by being very focused and deliberate. You get it at, again, jiujitsu.net/join. So guys, with that said, let's jump into this podcast with Luke.
I was looking at your accolades, man. It's wild. You were the winningest wrestler in Minnesota when you were in high school.
Yeah.
That's
pretty... kind of a crazy story. So I played football too, and midway through our football year, I tore both ligaments in my ankle. I fractured my ankle and tore both ligaments on each side. And I knew that year I'd had the opportunity to get the career wins at the time. So fortunately, I came down here to the doctor who actually worked with Gopher Wrestling. So I got connected with him, came down here, had surgery, and I was back within 2 months competing, probably not nowhere near where I should be. But I was fortunate enough that I was able to kind of limp along at the beginning of the year and still be able to have the year that I wanted to. Maybe not quite that I wanted to, but I was able to get things done. So
that's impressive. How old were you when you started wrestling?
I was 6 years old. So it was I didn't come from a family, wrestling's a pretty family oriented sport. And it seems like, once a family gets into it, you're into it. I didn't come from a family of wrestling per se. I just got a slip at school. That's how they used to do things back in the day, right? Like, hockey starts this week, here's a slip. Wrestling starts this week, here's a slip. And I was super active. So any chance I got, I bring something home, and I bring home the wrestling slip. And my mom was like, absolutely not, no way. My dad's like, oh, let me see that. He wrestled for a year, I think in 7th grade when he was in middle school. And then he said, well, you better get your shoes. It starts in a half hour. So we threw the shoes on, and the rest was history. So
that's funny. My mom said the same thing when I got into wrestling in high school here. It was the same thing. She's like, oh, you're not doing that. You can go play football and bash your brains in with helmets, but this wrestling stuff, no way. With wrestling, when did you find a love for it? Was it like immediate, or was it, maybe after you started to get a little skill under your belt?
Yeah, I think kind of right away. I was fortunate enough. I had some success kind of early on. Probably my second year. It was sports were so different back then, right? It was still more seasonal. It was you wrestled during the wrestling season and then you did all the other stuff. It's not where like at young ages now kids are kind of like, all right, this is my sport. I'm going in all in on it. But yeah, I kind of had success right away. And I really love the intensity, you know, of it, and the kind of you versus another guy out there. Like I really, that was, you know, kind of my thing. So I kind of, it's hard to think back on exactly when like I fell in love and I knew that this is what I was going to do long term, but I know I liked it from the very beginning. I hated to lose. And I think that was one of the things that helped drive me to be where I got to in my career. But I think it was the challenge of trying to push myself, and it was to be the best I could be. And it was kind of on me that I really enjoyed about the sport.
Do you think as far as skill development, you know, is it better to be a specialist? I mean, like you said, you see two ways of kind of doing things now. And there are still some kids that do a little bit of everything, football, wrestling, basketball, and they still get really good at a specific sport. As far as what you've seen, and you've coached for quite a few years now, are you seeing are wrestlers better than they were, or is it detrimental to be a specialist essentially? And then, you know, with injuries and other problems that can occur.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Wrestlers are better than they were. You know, the coaching, the opportunities, high school kids can actually come in with RTCs and train in college rooms right now. So they get those opportunities, that feel. There's club programs that really started heavily about 10 years ago that has elevated the sport. But my thought process is, and again, I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen some kids that at a very young age that wrestling was their thing, and they were great at young age and they were great all the way through. I've seen kids who were great young and have burnt out and, you know, didn't end up either going to college or even, you know, liking the sport by the time they were done. But my philosophy is, and I have a young son who wrestles now too, and I want him to love the sport the way I do it. But my philosophy is you have only so many matches in your body. Or I've heard it, one of our other coaches said it another way too. You have 10 good years. You can use those 10 years from 5 to 15, 10 to 20, or 15 to 25. When do you want to use your good 10 years? And that's kind of my thought process a little bit with the specialization and some of that stuff. It's like you can be all in from age 5 on, but when you hit 15, is your body going to be able to hold up one? Mentally, it's hard to be mentally so involved at that level at a young age to be able to do it, you know. Now everyone is different. I think there's guys who I've seen happen, you know, start out at a young age, they're wrestling all in, they're everywhere, and they come through. But I think those guys are more few and far between. I really believe that you only have, you know, so many matches or 10 good years where you can really be super competitive and involved and at your very peak mentally, physically, and everything. So that's kind of the approach I've taken with my kids. That's a lot of advice I give to anybody who asks me. You know, my son plays football, he plays basketball, he does all the other stuff. When we're in football season, we're in football season. We're not getting done with football practice, running over to wrestling practice, right? Like they have to be kids too. So yeah, that's kind of my thought process on it. Again, at the same time, every kid is different too, right? Every individual is different.
Yeah, no, I think it's smart. You know, there's actually a book, right? Yeah. This one by a guy named David Epstein called Range. In the book, he sort of brings up that sort of idea where, you know, everybody thinks of like Tiger Woods as like the example where, you know, his dad was training him basically since he was a small child. But then he compares it to like guys like Roger Federer, who was not a specialist. He basically dabbled in a bunch of different stuff. And then later on, he decided, okay, this is what I'm tennis. This is what I'm doing. And he became an amazing tennis player. And as he goes through the book, he basically, as you're saying, everybody's a little different. And so he shows that like, yeah, there are these guys that specialize very early. And for every one of those those guys. There's another guy who did not specialize early, who dabbled, developed all these different skills and abilities from all these other sports, and then decided that this is the sport I'm going to get into. And I think it's smart. I think, I like you said, the skills that people are developing are really good, but I see it jiu-jitsu, I see it wrestling, see it in all these different sports where these kids don't get to grow up like we did, where they get to like do their sport, have fun with it, and like set it down and be away from it for a little bit and then come back to it with some renewed excitement. It's like they're doing it year round. Yeah. And, some kids, they thrive off that. They love it and it's great, and then some kids get into it and you watch them by the time they're teenagers, their parents have been basically just pushing the pedal down on them. And then they want nothing to do with this thing that they've dedicated, a huge chunk of their life to. And it's kind of sad to see. So I kind of intuitively lean towards what you're saying, where you give them some space and you give them a little bit of decision making if they want to keep doing it or if they want to play other sports.
Yeah.
What do you think was maybe for you the turning point where you're like, all right, I can be really, I know you said you started having some success early. Was there something particular that you saw or something that you felt that kind of made you feel that you're going to be good at this thing, or you could take it to a high level and even college level and be very successful?
Yeah. I don't know if there was like an exact moment. I really enjoyed the training process and learning and developing. And, I was fortunate enough to go to some national tournaments when I was 10, 12, 14 and had some success there. And that's when I think I really felt like, wow, this is maybe something I can, go do in college. And again, it was different back then. It was, with the social media and internet and all that stuff now, like they're ranking 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds. Like there wasn't, it's crazy. There wasn't that stuff back then. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think one thing that was really unique for me in the state of Minnesota is you can wrestle varsity in 7th grade. So I was fortunate enough to be able to be in a spot where I was big enough to wrestle 103 pounds at the time, but be able to compete at the varsity level and get pushed there. And I think that was really when I kind of jumped levels. I had success, but I really, my 7th, 8th grade year was where I really kind of jumped levels in the sport. But I wasn't in just our little local youth program. I was able to go into high school and wrestle with older, more mature guys. And, I couldn't get away with some of the sloppy stuff that I was able to do against, guys my age and ability. I had to really perfect things when I got into the high school room. And that's what I was kind of talking about with high school kids now. They can get into the college room, obviously a way different level, but they can get into the college room and wrestle college guys. And they're so much more college ready by the time they get here because they felt that for 2-3 years before they get on the college stage.
So here's a question related to like sort of training, because obviously you've been training for a long time in wrestling, you've been coaching for a long time. I'm sure the way that things were done 20 plus years ago, you do very differently now. Maybe some stuff similar, but maybe a lot of it's very different. When it comes to the way that you're, practicing the moves and the different takedowns, pins, whatever it is that you're trying to work on, do you give a lot of focus towards like getting in like the repetitions of the movement where you're basically going through your chains, your takedowns, whatever it is, or do you spend more time doing like live drills or like actual live wrestling? How do you break that up with your coaching, or what do you think's been beneficial to you when you were wrestling?
Yeah, I think back when I wrestled, it was you drill and there was drill live, and I think over the past 15 years, there's a lot more sparring. Mm-hmm. So you'll drill the technique and then you'll spar in it. And then you maybe, and then you go live, I think that sparring piece has really helped wrestlers and wrestling develop a little bit because you can, we're all so win focused at times, right? Yeah. That's like when you're going live, I don't know if I'm willing to try something and make a mistake and give something up. But in sparring, you're giving guys different feels, you're trying stuff, you're figuring stuff out. You can learn so much more and learn the positions because you're not afraid of giving something up, because if you do, you'll just wrestle through the position, come back out, go again, Mm-hmm. So we've done a lot more. You drill the technique, you spar it, and then we go live in it, after the fact. So I think that's the biggest thing that's changed from when I was a competitor to where we're at now. And the way we coach and kind of try to help our guys develop is we spend a lot of time in that sparring position, where they can learn positions a little bit better and not be afraid to make mistakes or give stuff up in the process.
Okay. And so when you're saying sparring, just because like the verbiage, that obviously it's the same stuff, but the verbiage changes. So for anybody listening, when you're saying sparring, you mean like, let's say that you were working a particular takedown. Then when you go and do the sparring version, you're going to be using whatever the positions that you guys were getting into. You're going to focus on just that area during sparring. And then if you get out of that area, then you're going to go right back to it and get back to just focusing on that one thing, that one position. Yeah.
A lot of times we'll do specific technical areas like, okay, we're sparring in this position here for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. You spar through it, you get out of it, go back into it. Sometimes you'll spar through everything, from your feet to the takedown, to the defense, to the, you just continually wrestle and sparring through all positions too. So depending on what we're trying to get out of it that day. But yeah, like when we're working on specific techniques with guys, they'll spar in that position, they get out of it, they'll come right back to it and go again.
What do you feel like is the hardest part of the transition from high school to college or collegiate level? I mean, obviously you see a lot of athletes are phenomenal in high school and maybe they don't do very well at the college ranks and vice versa. Is there something that you've noticed that maybe is the most difficult thing to overcome when you're transitioning to college?
Yeah, I think, the number one, the physical piece of it, right? Like guys are just, you're coming out of high school and, the best wrestler, the best technical, you know what I mean? Like that guy usually wins in high school. When you get into college, now you're wrestling men, right? You're a young man. Now you're getting into a college room and you're wrestling men. So there's the physical piece of it that you have to be able to manage and deal with too. The other piece is high school, for the most part, some of them are really, really good, but college wrestlers wrestle through positions so much more than high school kids do, right? Like you get in on a deep shot in high school, you're probably going to finish that. In college, you get in on a deep shot, you'll finish once a 5 maybe, right? Guys just wrestle through positions so much more. So like the physical piece of being able to wrestle through positions and keep going, chain wrestling through positions is where I think guys struggle with originally coming out. And then the other piece is like the mental piece, right? Like a lot of the best guys, you've been the best guy in your room, in your club, at your high school, and now you're in this college room with all these other super great wrestlers too. And now you kind of become just one of the guys instead of the best guy in the room. And I think sometimes you almost get worse before you get better in the room. You'll see freshmen come in and they start to struggle a little bit that first month or two. And then all of a sudden, after about 2 months, they start to figure things out a little bit. And now you see them skyrocket up and really take jumps.
What are some keys to help out? Like if someone's trying to build that mental or their physical toughness, like as a coach, what do you do to help facilitate that?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and I tell our guys all the time, whether it be in the practice room or whether it be out in competitions, like you just have to believe in the process. Like you can't be afraid of making mistakes. You can't be afraid of giving stuff up. You can't you don't have to be okay with, things not going great at practice, but you have to leave it there, right? You have to sit down. I tell guys all the time after practice, like sit down, reevaluate how practice went, what went well, what went wrong, what do you need to work on, and then leave it there. You know what I mean? If you want to spend some time working on it, but when you walk out of the wrestling room, leave it there. Don't bring it with you. When you come back, have a plan. What am I going to work on today at practice? What are my goals? Am I trying to work on my defense? Am I trying to get to my single leg or my high crotch? But, and try to not focus on winning practice, but focus on getting better in certain areas, and believe in the process. And it probably never happens fast enough for any of us, right? Like we want to be there now, but believe in the process, and there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and understand it. But the guys who can really do that, go and let the bad practices or the bad match or some of that stuff, they let it go. They evaluate it and figure out what adjustments they need to make, but they can leave that behind and move forward, those are the guys that have success at this level.
With your own wrestling and transition into college and everything else, did you struggle with either the mental or the physical element when you moved up to the new level?
Yeah. I I don't know. And again, it was so different back then because I was a good high school wrestler, but now these high school wrestlers that come in are great, right? They're exceptional, and you took your lumps. I think it maybe took me a month or two to get before I got a takedown on, not I could take down the freshmen that came in with me, but like the actual legit guys that were in the room. It took me a little bit of time, and which is tough to do, but you just you keep kind of understanding like, okay. And our coaches would tell us all the time, like, hey, you're getting better. Trust and believe in the process. You're getting better. And it's hard to see how much better you're getting when you're in the room wrestling, those other great college wrestlers or the guys that you wrestle all the time, each other super well, right? So they can stop your stuff, and you have a hard time getting to it sometimes, but then you go out and you compete in that first open, and it's like, holy buckets, I've gotten a ton better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think, it's just about, I remember one time in the room, I was, again, when I came in, I think they were ranked they had gotten like second, third in the country. Minnesota had at the time when I came in as a freshman, and I was wrestling Chad Kraft, who was an NCAA finalist. And he was killing me when I first got there. But then the next thing I know, I'm getting to his legs. I'm not finishing, but I'm getting to his legs. You know what I mean? Or he's getting to my legs, and it takes him 2-3 different finishes before he actually scores the takedown. And so I can see, as small little wins like that I could see in my wrestling that I'm getting better. And then I remember one time I was wrestling him, and I got a takedown, and he turned back and he elbows me right in the head. And I'm like, what the hell, dude? What are you elbowing me for? Like, I didn't do anything. I'm just wrestling. I just took you down. But that's when I realized, like, okay, I'm getting to him. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's getting frustrated. Like, I'm getting better. I'm figuring this thing out.
Yeah. How important are those? Like, and obviously the end goal is to get the takedown, get the pin, but how important are those little victories, especially when you're the youngest guy, or maybe you're not up to that level yet? Like, how do you try to keep those younger athletes like on that path? Because it's got to be easy to stray away from it, because it's like you're just not getting the takedowns. It took you months.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? How are you like evaluating them or giving them those little ideas to continue to get to that goal?
Yeah, just trying to, obviously trying to walk around and when we see them doing good things that we'll call it out, like, hey, that was a beautiful shot. I know we didn't finish, but man, 2 weeks ago we weren't even sniffing his legs. We weren't getting to him, so just trying to, communicate that with them, trying to get them to understand, like, hey, like my coaches did with me, like, you're getting better. You got to believe it. You got to believe in the process here. Like, I can see what you're doing here. You're making gains. It may, maybe it doesn't always feel like it, but just continue to work, continue to develop. And just trying to stay as positive as I can with those guys and point out, the areas that they're doing well, because we all know as competitors, like, you see all the negative stuff super clearly, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily always see the little positive things that are happening throughout a match or throughout practice, and trying to make sure we point those out, to our young guys.
Yeah, because we're usually like the most critical of ourselves about everything that we do, right? So
yeah.
It's pretty hard. Here's a question for you. This is about like some of the differences between, like, at least that I've experienced in jiu-jitsu versus wrestling. So in jiu-jitsu, rather, there's this whole idea of, like, the little guy being able to, roll or wrestle with the big guy because of being on the ground and using technique and da-da-da. So in the gym, a lot of times in the room, you'll have big guys roll with small guys and all that, mixed up, whatever. But when I wrestled, in a lot of the rooms that I've been in and I've wrestled, a lot of times you stick to people that are your same weight class. You know what I mean? For various reasons, right?
Yeah.
And one of them being safety, and then other two, if that's what you're training for, if you're going to go against guys at weight, then you probably want to feel that kind of that size. Do you in your gym or in your mat room, do you keep it to where you're typically like a one weight class around, or is there a lot of mixing up of weights when you guys are like going through technique or going live or whatever?
Yeah, I think for the most part, you seem to always be around, one or two weights within the guys that you wrestle. I know we've tried a lot to mix guys up a little bit, especially if it's like, okay, we're not competing here. You know what I mean? We're not in our competition phase
Right.
where we're getting ready, but like, hey, grab this guy and roll around with him. And, you may be 4 or 5 weight classes apart. And obviously they're not going to go live together, but that sparring situation, you can get a lot of different feels that way as well too. So we probably don't do it enough because I think it's a super positive thing. It's always been, a good thing when we've done it, but yeah, it's definitely, because there's so many, you can learn so many different things from so many different guys. It doesn't have to be just a guy a weight or two above you, and again, that same thing, if I'm the strongest guy around my weight but then I go and I spar with a guy who's 3 weight classes above, I probably can't get away with some of the stuff that I've gotten away with. So I have to make adjustments and, figure some stuff out. So the times we've done that, it's been super positive for our guys.
Yeah, and kind of going the opposite, and obviously you're talking about if you're going up a weight class, you're rolling with a stronger guy, so you have to be a little bit more technical or thoughtful with like your techniques. Do you see any benefits of, like, let's say that you're one of the heavier weight classes, and then you drop down a few weight classes, and you're going with a guy who's a bit smaller, and then going with that guy, not live, but sparring and exchanging with them? What kind of benefits do you see there?
Yeah, just their quickness. They move so well that you have to be able to feel those adjustments, So yeah, I think that can be super positive too. But the big thing when you're a bigger guy going with a smaller guy, they're just so fast. They're quick. They're in on your legs, at least in wrestling, right? They're on your legs before you even think about it compared to the guys your size or your weight. So, your head and hands and down blocking and have your feet moving and some of that stuff you can feel a lot. They're usually, I shouldn't say usually, but sometimes a lot more flexible and can roll through positions a little bit. So you get a lot different feel there as well too.
Yeah, it's similar in jiu-jitsu where, like, obviously you get guys that are much quicker than you, however they move. And, if you're going with a smaller person, you're not going to use your full weight or strength. And so then you're trying to exchange with a technique with a person that's much faster. And you get into a lot of, I feel like different weight classes, you have different positions and things that their bodies will allow them to do.
Yeah.
Then you see, like, you see this in wrestling too, the types of techniques that you'll see, say, with the lower weight classes versus like, your heavyweights.
Yeah.
Obviously there will be some similar ones, but there's also going to be a lot of different ones that you won't see from one to the other.
Yeah.
What's a typical like wrestling practice for you guys? Maybe just outside of competition, then when you're nearing towards a tournament or a competition, what does the wrestling practice kind of look like as far as like sparring, drilling, live rounds?
Yeah. I think it really depends on where we're at kind of in our season and what we're doing. Depends if we want a volume day, we'll come in. We actually work out from 10 to noon. I think we've been doing that for probably close to 10 years now. Wrestling's always been a sport where it's like, okay, we're going to work out at 3, after school at 3 to 4 o'clock. And we changed this about 10 years ago, and it's been an awesome thing for us. You look at, the majority of the tournaments that we wrestle in start at 10 o'clock. And it's just been a really positive thing. We feel like wrestling's the most important, wrestling's our sport. It's our craft, right? Like, we want to get the most out of the wrestling workout. Obviously you need to train, strength training, conditioning, all that stuff, but that's all secondary stuff to help your wrestling. So we want guys to be excited and fresh when they come into practice. So we work out from 10 to noon. And if we're doing a volume day, a lot of times we'll come in and guys will get warmed up on their own. They'll spend 5 to 10 minutes jogging around, getting warmed up. Some days we'll do a game. We'll play like speedball or something like that. Actually, the guys want to play that every day, but we have to kind of manage that. But they'll get warmed up, and then they'll get some time to kind of drill on their own. And then we'll usually If we're working on technique, we'll put some, we'll have a plan for what we want to hit technically that day, and spend, 20 minutes or so working on that. And then we'll get into a hard drill. Sometimes we'll spar, we'll drill and work technically on it. Then we'll spar in those positions, do a hard drill, and then we get into our live wrestling. So our practices are probably, on our volume days, are an hour and a half to 2 hours. When we're getting closer to competition and we're trying to just, make sure guys are feeling good and fresh to compete, they'll be closer to an hour and a half.
Gotcha. And then what do you guys do for conditioning? What do you feel like is maybe some of the best ways to build kind of grappling type of conditioning? People have, obviously grappling is one of the things wrestling can help that condition. What are those things outside of wrestling that you guys focus on that you feel like really helps the gas tank?
Yeah. The biggest thing that we've done a lot of over the last few years is airdynes. We do a lot of bike training with our guys. I just feel like that's been really good. I know, again, when I came up, we did a lot of running, and it was a lot of long distance running. Before every lift in the morning, we'd go out and we'd run 2 to 3 miles, and then we'd come in and we'd lift, which was great, but we weren't getting what I didn't feel we were getting out of our lifts what we could have, right? Like you're trying to build power, you're trying to build explosiveness in your lifts. But after you just ran 2 to 3 miles, there's not, and we're competitors, we're not out jogging 2 to 3 miles, right? Like we're running. So there wasn't a whole lot left in the tank. So again, probably about 10 years ago, we switched things up and we started, we would just do a dynamic warm up. We'd come in and we lift, and then we did all of our conditioning and our running after the lift. And it, whether if we went for a 2 to 3 mile, we do that after the lift. We actually started doing a lot of sprints after as well too. And again, when we always did sprint workouts before, it was the 400s, then you do 200s, then 100s, then 50s. Well, we completely switched that around. We ran our 50s first. You know what I mean? Again, working on your power explosion first, and then you'd go to the 100s, and then the 200s, and the 400s. The 400s are just a grind anyway, right? Like, so I want to get as much power and explosion as I can. Then once my muscles get to a certain point, then I'm just going to grind it out, right? Then we can push through it and try to get that the mental toughness and push through and power through stuff. So we switched that a lot, again, about 10 years ago. And I think that was a really positive thing for us because our guys could wrestle forever. We just wanted, we felt like we were maybe missing a little of that power explosion when we needed to score short time in a period that we didn't quite have it. So we still do some of that long distance stuff at certain times, but a lot of it's that short, intense explosions, whether it be in our sprints, our runs, or ellipticals or not ellipticals, airdynes.
Yeah, and the airdyne's nice too. At least in my experience, it's a little bit easier on the knees, getting out there and just like sprinting super hard. Maybe I'm just getting older because I'm in my late 30s, right? So, but it's a lot easier to do like a hard sprint round on an airdyne than it is to get out there and just pound pavement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little, and it's something different too, right? I mean, I think knees are such a, in wrestling, I mean, I'm sure, is that like, let me ask you this, switching gears a little bit, as far as injuries go, what do you guys see as far as in wrestling? What are most commonly injured and problems maybe that you have in the, on the mats that people have?
Yeah. Shoulders and knees are the big ones, again, and wrestling's changed so much. There's so much more rolling around, scrambling than there used to be back in the day. So everything just gets torqued on so much more than I feel like it used to. So you see a lot more knees getting twisted up, and even shoulders getting extended. Sure. And so those are the big two you see a lot are the shoulders and the knees. And obviously the more you can protect those, the better.
What kind of injuries have you had? Do you have any bad injuries you've had over the years?
Not a ton. I talked about my ankle early on. In football, I broke my ankle and tore both ligaments. But throughout college, I had small little knee injuries, sprains here and there, but for the most part, I was pretty healthy. But then once I graduated, I actually had neck surgery. One of my, in between C4 and C5, it got really bad towards the end of my senior year. And then after that, I think I graduated in 2003, and then January of 2004, I had neck surgery, and it got so bad that if someone came up and like patted me on the back, like I would almost drop to my knees. It was just, there was pain. And so I ended up getting that fused together, and it was amazing. Like I could turn my neck about this far and it would pinch and go down. And the second I had surgery, I had more range of motion than I'd had for a long time. It was crazy how much better I've felt. And it's been, it still gets sore and hurts a little bit. I've wrestled for 20 years since. But yeah, that was kind of the big one. I've had a few shoulder cleanouts and some of that stuff, but my neck was the big one right after I graduated.
Yeah. How old are you now, Luke?
44.
So, I don't know how active you still are, but obviously you wrestled after, you had the neck surgery and everything else. How have you, because we have a lot of people listening that are, the jiu-jitsu ranges and ages, right? Because it's basically just an open door for anybody that wants to do it. So we do get people that are, north of 35, getting into their 40s, whatever, they get on the mats. How have you adjusted your training, your wrestling, all that sort of stuff as you've gotten older? Like, is there anything in particular that you've done to sort of change it up so that you can stay active without grinding your body down too hard?
Yeah. I think the big thing is I got probably, I don't know, 12 years ago or so, I lifted throughout college, but I wasn't super into lifting. But about 12 years ago, prior to that, once I got done competing, I would just like train, wrestle, and elliptical, right? Like, or bike or do something like that. I just wasn't into lifting, but I started lifting about 12 years ago, and I don't lift heavy. It's a lot of body weight stuff, but I've stayed super, I can't think of the word I'm looking, but diligent with that. Consistent. Consistent with that, where I lift 2 to 3 times a week. And again, it's not heavy weight. I just keep moving. I've been fortunate to keep everything, fairly strong around me so that, I don't feel as much, and the other thing is I haven't stopped yet either, which is my biggest scare is when I stop, I'm not going to be able to, to move very well at all. But I think, just staying consistent with, lifting and developing kind of all of my body. And, when it comes to the wrestling piece of it, I don't shoot very much anymore with my neck. The second I do a ton of shooting, I can feel it a ton of my neck. So I let those guys shoot and just wrestle from there. But I don't think our guys love that. But
so you just counter wrestle a lot is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah,
I stall a lot.
You all have a lot.
So you said like you basically took the positions or whatever that were creating the most issues, and then basically just adapted your style to suit what you had available to you at that time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Would you say in jiu-jitsu we say like, some people have an old man game? Would you say you have like an old man type wrestling game?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I pull out all the old tricks on the guys, and until they figure it out. Once they figure it out, then I can't get any more, and I gotta find a new way to to get them. But yeah.
Do you guys have a lot of like different styles of wrestling? Like, I mean, some people or some of your wrestlers maybe are very good at one thing and some are very elite at something else. Do you see that, or is everyone kind of coming up has a similar kind of type of way they wrestle? Obviously, the weight class is going to play a role, but do you see anything like that?
Yeah, we have a lot of, we have a lot of variety in the way our guys wrestle. I think for us is number one, when we recruit guys, we want to recruit guys who, number one, love it, right? We try to figure out if they love it or not, because there's a lot of great wrestlers out there, but if they don't love it, it's going to be very hard to be successful at this level. So do they love it? Number two is, do they compete hard? And it doesn't necessarily, competing hard doesn't mean you're the guy who's hand fighting like crazy or taking 1,000 shots, but you're out there, you're competing hard, whether that means you're scrambling through positions when the guys get to your legs, or, you know what I mean? There's a lot of different ways to compete really hard. Maybe it's, you're better on top, so you compete super hard there. but we want guys that can, just compete super hard and look to wrestle through positions and score points. So we get a lot of variety of guys depending on, where their strengths are. But I think those are the two really big things we look at, and that's recruiting wise. And so we get a lot of different looks in our room. And then, we have some really good connections in certain areas that I think, obviously being in the Midwest, there's a certain type of wrestler in the Midwest, not always, but a lot of times, right? So we get a lot of similar guys like that. We've had some other clubs around the country that we recruit really well out of, and they kind of have their style of wrestling a little bit, and that comes in. So you get those differences there. But again, for us, what we want guys who love it and compete hard, and how they compete hard, how they score points. It doesn't have to be like, I know that certain, a lot of times coaches come in and they want to develop guys into their mold of style of wrestling. Yeah. Our style of wrestling is, do you compete hard? Do you go out there? Are you trying to score points? It doesn't have to. We don't have to do it the exact same way, but we want you out there being aggressive and trying to score points, whatever that looks like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How do you know if they love it? What do you look for? How do you know?
That's the hard piece, right? It really is, because I've recruited guys oh man, this guy competes at everything. He has to love it. And then you see, well, down the road, you end up finding out that, well, maybe it wasn't him, it was dad, So we ask a lot of questions. We try to do as much research on them as they're probably doing on us as a school and a staff. And, we talk to their club coaches. Obviously we talk to their parents a lot. We talk to their high school coaches. We see what they're following on social media and looking at that stuff to see, are they constantly liking and looking wrestling posts and some of that. So I wish it was easy to just say, all right, this guy loves it, this guy doesn't, so it's hard to kind of wade through, but we tried to do our best to see, is this kid doing it because he's really good at wrestling and that's what he feels like he should be doing, or is he doing it because he loves it? I think when you go, a lot of times when we go to practice and see guys wrestle in practice, I think that's where you can see if guys really love it or not a lot of times, Obviously, if you just go one time, it's harder to tell, but we try to get there a few different times and see if they're really, are they a student of the sport? Are they trying to figure things out, and or are they just going, are they going through the motions at practice? I think those are a lot of telltale signs you can tell if guys really love it, if they're super engaged. Are they into it? Can you see they're picking the guy's brain that they're working out with after the go to see how, what he did there, or, and constantly trying to develop their wrestling.
You were talking about the dad thing. I have a friend of mine who was a great wrestler in high school. He went to college, had a scholarship, the whole deal. And then he ended up washing out because, dad wasn't there to be over top of him. And he really didn't like wrestling that much. And he started partying a bunch. And then just, that was that. To kind of go back to you and your son, right? Because you were saying that you got a boy and that obviously he wrestles. How do you, because anytime we get passionate about it, about something, we naturally want to share it. And it's something that, if it's something you dedicated your life to, it's like the family business. I want to pass this down and share it with my son. This is what your dad does, right? Wrestling is your life. How do you manage allowing, bringing him into wrestling, doing all that stuff, but still allowing it to be fun for him and be something completely separate from you, so that you're not becoming an overbearing wrestling dad who's trying to push his thing on his kid?
Yeah. Well, a couple things I feel like, again, I'm learning through the process too, right? I've been a wrestling coach a long time. I've been a wrestling dad, just for a handful of years here. But, I've been really fortunate. He gets to come into practice. He gets to be around the guys. He's been on bus trips. So for him at an early age, he was around wrestling, not necessarily wrestling, but around it. So wrestling was fun to him, so I've been fortunate that way a little bit. But I think, a few things I do. And number one thing, when I pick him up for practice, like, and I'm really fortunate. There's some really good clubs around here that I've been able to bring him to. And I drop him off. I don't sit and watch. I don't watch over him. I trust those guys, and he needs to, like, he can't be doing it because I'm sitting there watching over top of him. He needs to be doing it because he likes it. He's enjoying it, and he wants to do it. So I don't sit and watch over him at practice. I leave and go make calls or do whatever I have to do. And then pick him up afterwards. When we get in the car, I ask him how practice was. If he wants to get into it, which he's 11, he doesn't. How was practice? Oh, it was good. Okay. I leave it at that. We don't ever talk about wrestling on the car ride home, because I think that's where over the years, I've seen and I've heard relationships, father-son relationships get ruined in the car because the kid didn't maybe work hard in practice, or he didn't do this, or he's not this. Like, we don't, in the car ride on the way home, don't touch it. We don't talk about it.
Leaving it in the mat room, like you said earlier, right? Just leaving it there.
Yeah, leaving it there. And again, like, I also don't want to be the dad who just lets him figure out if he likes it or not, right? I mean, I do, but he's 11, right? Like, you have to push them a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing that I do with him too is we sit down at the beginning of every year when football's over. I said, okay, we're going to, wrestling season starts here. Here's, what are your goals this year? What do you want to do? And he'll tell me his goals on what he wants to do, whether it's what tournaments he wants to go to, what he wants to do. Does he want to try to win a state title? Whatever they are. And I say, okay, well, here's what I see. I think we should be doing X, Y, and Z. Here's the tournaments. If this is what you want to do, here's what I feel like we should do. And if if these are your goals and this is what you want to do, this is what we should probably do. And we sit down and we kind of, again, I steer it, but we develop it together a little bit. You know what I mean? I try to make him have some ownership in it. There's times where I really don't want him, whether I don't want him to, or I feel like he's had a lot, or I don't want to bring him to practice that day because I've been traveling a lot, that I say, hey, buddy, what do you think? Do you want to go to practice today? And I try to make it, sometimes he surprises, sometimes he's like, yeah, I want to go. And it's like, okay, let's go. But there's times that he says he doesn't want to go. And I'm like, okay, this is your thing. I had my career, if you don't want to go, then let's not go today. And it doesn't happen very often with him because it's his own, I feel like I've done a good job of kind of trying to create it, it's his career and his own thing. It's not me doing it. So, again, I definitely don't think I'm doing things perfectly. I'm figuring it out too, but I know those are some things that I've really tried to do with him, is let him have some ownership in it and develop it. And like, I know he's only 10 years old, so I don't know if he really knows what he wants, but I know he wants to be successful, and he's got some goals that he wants to do. And I say, okay, if this is what you want to do, let's make a plan together and we'll move forward.
Gotcha. So yeah, and I think it maybe probably helps that, like you said, you already had your time in the sun, you won your championships, you did all that stuff. So your child's career is your child's, rather than you trying to, like this kid, he has to win because he's a representation of me, right? He's a representation of himself. You're just trying to help him, get the best out of himself. That's what you're trying to do, right? Edge him along, give him the push when he needs it. But at the end of the day, he's going to be his own human, and his life is his own. Yeah,
definitely. And I've seen dads in my situation too that don't want to push at all. And then they just let them decide on their own, and they never really get them into it either. Right. So, again, I don't want to sound like I'm just like, oh, this is his thing. I do push him at times too, because he's 10 years old. They don't know, they only know what they know. They need to be pushed, right? Like, if I just let him eat whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, that wouldn't work either. So,
that's right. I mean, dude, it's like if you asked me when I was 11 years old, like, hey, what do you want to do? It's like, I want to go eat a bowl of cereal and I want to play video games, right? But like, like your parents are like, hey, get off your ass. You got to go do something.
Yeah.
It's such a, we all have boys, all of us have boys. And it's just such a fine line. It's like pushing them enough to do that, and then not pushing them so much to where they hate it. And you said something that was really important, and I think that transcends to like kids and adults, is making it fun. And you mentioned something about a game you guys play. What's that game that you guys play in the wrestling room?
Oh, speedball.
What is speedball?
Speedball or handball is basically just a ball, and you split them up in teams, and then you can take. It's like ultimate frisbee. You can take 3 steps, and then you throw the ball and touch the other side of the wall. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
How do you keep it fun? And besides that, is there a way that you try to keep it fun because a lot of these wrestlers are our kids. I mean, they're still like 18, 19 years old. They're still kids. And how do you keep it fun for them?
We just try to try to keep it light in the rooms. Obviously, when we're like going live and, when we're competing, we want it to be, we want guys to be focused and trying, but we joke around a lot. We have a lot of fun with the team. We do a lot of team activities. So it's not like the whole, every time we get together, it's not just, okay, it's wrestling practice, here we go. So we try to do a lot of different team activities and that type of stuff too. But, Coach Agam does a great job joking around and, messing with guys, and the guys mess with us. We really have, obviously we're coaches, right? But I want to have a relationship with these guys too that's going to last a lifetime. And it's not just like, hey, I'm here, I'm your coach. I don't want just a coach-athlete relationship. I want to have a relationship long-term with these guys. And I think for those guys to understand that that's, how we are as a staff and what we want out of this relationship and career too. I think that goes a long way. But yeah, it's hard sometimes because they are so, we're so focused at times and, want to win that as I've the years of me coaching and even as a competitor when I was competing, I realized like as I got older, like it doesn't have to be so serious all the time, right? Like you can have fun and enjoy it. So we try to bring a lot of that into the room as well too.
Yeah. Going back to your coaching, when you guys are teaching, or you're like, let's say if you're going through a day where you're giving some like technical instruction, demonstrations, things of that nature, during one of your practices, how many things will you guys focus on? Will you divide it up and have different things for different groups, or will you be going over like 1 or 2 things? Like, how do you guys do it?
Yeah, I think for us is it's really like when we have the full team together, a lot of what we teach is more positional type wrestling. I guess I shouldn't say that we don't ever do, a single leg setup or a single leg finish or something like that. But a lot of it's more positional type. And we'll spend a lot of time in 2 or 3 areas. And then later in the week, when we break up individually, that's when we really fine tune into like, hey, here's the position, but here, like, I think this setup would work really good for you, or this finish would work really good for you. So a lot of our team wrestling is more positional, or team technique is more positional, that we focus on the areas that kind of everybody needs to know. And then really we try to, with our individual sessions, individual workouts, we try to really fine tune like, okay, this guy is maybe struggling in this area, or this is how I think this finish or this setup or this shot could work really good for him.
Okay.
So if that makes sense.
It does make sense. No, it 100% makes sense. Because obviously if you have a bigger group, then it's hard to narrow down specific things for everyone. Whereas, it just would take too long. But if you have a smaller group or like a smaller few people, it's much easier to, here's something that's going to work for you and then have them do it. The reason I ask is because like in Jiu-Jitsu, one of the rubs, one of the issues is that like a lot of gyms will teach way too much information in like one session. Like you'll have like, you might have they might do like an hour class or something in some gym, and you might go in there and some guy's teaching like 3 or 4 things. They do it a couple of times, they move on to the next thing, and like nobody remembers what the hell they're supposed to be doing because they didn't have any time with that move, opposed to, anytime I've been around wrestlers, wrestled, or talked to wrestling coaches, it's always like, here's like the 1 or 2 things that are all connected together. This is what we're going to focus on. And it's like a very clear intention for that practice. We're focused on this little sliver. And then, we'll do like live work with it, or do sparring and then live work with it afterwards.
Yeah. A lot of times what we'll do is like, okay, if we just got done with a competition, then it's like, we'll sit down, we rewatch the film, and obviously individually we'll see what guys need, but hey, we really missed this area as a team. So we're going to focus on that. Or when we're when we're out of season and we don't, there's not competitions, we're like, we're going to spend this week or this 2 weeks, we're going to spend it on the mat, or we're going to spend it on finishes, or we're going to spend it here. And we'll work on something. We'll come back in the next day. We'll review that. And then we'll move on to 1 or 2 other things. Then the next day we'll review those couple things. So you get a lot of reps in those areas, and a lot of time we kind of pound it into them. So you spend a week or 2 in that area really focusing, and then building, you'll start out super basic and then you'll kind of build off it as the week goes. Which has seemed like it's been a really good thing for us.
John had so from Grapple Science had said something. Did you wrestle with Brock Lesnar, or was he at Minnesota at the time you were there?
I did, yeah. He came in, so obviously he transferred in, but my freshman year was his first year there. He wrestled for 2 years, so we were on the team together for 2 years. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. What was that like?
It was crazy, man. He's a freak, man. He's a crazy guy. Yeah. It was, I was a lot younger at the time. So he hung out with quite a bit of the older guys, but just being able to be around him and, to follow him and what he was able to do, on the wrestling mat, and then his career afterwards. And, still have a little bit of contact with him as well too. So, he's one of a kind, man.
The other thing I want to, there's a lot more opportunities now for wrestlers just outside of just going to the Olympics. I mean, and even being a coach. I mean, so much success in MMA, in the UFC. Do you see some guys coming in, as they're getting ready to graduate? Do you see them trying to look for different avenues to continue to wrestle or use their wrestling, for MMA or other careers?
Yeah, we have obviously we have a really good connection into the MMA world. Kind of started with Brock, a little bit when he got into it, and then Logan Storley, and then we got connected with Dave Martin, and those guys down at the Kill Cliff Fight Club, and we have 3 guys training down there that graduated in the last 7 years or so. 7-8 years. But it's crazy how many young guys now look at that as okay, I'm going to wrestle in college, and then I'm going to transition into the MMA after that, which again, in the last 5 to 10 years, it's as much as that's blown up. It kind of gives guys a professional career path after, right? Because obviously wrestling, it's you got a chance to stay, make a world and Olympic team and do that. But now there's another avenue where if you want to keep, if you have that competitiveness and you want to keep competing, it's obviously not wrestling, but the MMA world, and those wrestlers are doing extremely well in it right now too. So we have a lot of guys that we recruit that, that's kind of their plan, to come wrestle, do that, maybe compete to make a world Olympic team, but then transition into MMA afterwards. So it's amazing how much that's grown over the past however many years.
Even in jiu-jitsu, I mean, a lot of these ADCCs and a lot of these big tournaments now, a lot of the elite guys they have a wrestling base, and they transition so well into jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And there are problems. They're good off the bat. They know how to grapple. I mean, obviously some of the rule sets, of course, are different, but they know how to do that. They're just so, and they have a certain mentality too. They have this mentality of just they can push, they can be uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think that it really is beneficial. And they just know how to pick up. I think once you have that base of wrestling, then the other stuff, you can kind of layer it on, and you can just add the jiu-jitsu in, and it seems to be it's natural for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I think the biggest thing, we have one of our guys is just up training with us here this week too. He's on break from his camp, and he was up training, and he said the hardest thing for him was, and I remember it too, when Brock was training, we would go over to the gym and work out with some of the guys, and for wrestlers, just getting comfortable being able to, we want to wrestle through positions all the time, right? And getting comfortable being on your back or not forcing positions or wrestling positions. We're always thinking about how do I score from the position, right? Mm-hmm. And he was just talking about that. That was the hardest thing when he was transitioning into MMA, and that is realizing I don't have to try to score in every position. I can relax a little bit. And I remember when I was rolling around with those guys a little bit, I felt that way as well too. So just getting comfortable there. And now he comes in and he wrestles and he's like, guy gets to his legs and he kind of gets comfortable there and lets him, sit him down and take him down. And he's starting to work that stuff. But
Sure.
yeah, it's just kind of funny how well it goes together. I know, like, who was it? Bo Nickel did a match, and now Jason Nolf, is he training jiu-jitsu full time now?
I'm not sure. I know he was training jiu-jitsu, and then like Helen Morales, she's like competing like in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah,
in the blue belt division, right?
Yeah, she's well, I mean, she hasn't been
murder.
trained. She says she's been training for, you don't know, bro. There could be some chick that just pulls guard and like wraps her up in something. The rules are different. I mean, if she tries to exchange takedowns with her, she's gonna get dumped. You know what I mean? Like, but it's interesting. But yeah, I think it's you see more and more of it, and you're even seeing, like, I see where a lot of these young wrestlers will in our area, where they'll wrestle during wrestling season, then off season they'll go do a little jiu-jitsu, and then when they go back to wrestling, they'll be in these weird, essentially, because in jiu-jitsu we do a lot of different weird, like we do a lot of different riding positions, like leg rides and stuff like that from wrestling, but we call them different positions in jiu-jitsu. But you spend a lot of time in those positions, and you can kind of come up with some weird funky stuff that you can then sort of take back with you, adjust it a little bit for the rules, and you can use it, so
yeah, I've always wanted to get trying to manage time a little bit, but get my son to do a little jiu-jitsu, because he's pretty good, like with legs in and some of that stuff. Like, he's got a really good scramble feel. I feel like he could be really good there, and I think it could help his wrestling a ton too, right? But I just haven't been able to find the time and manage it. I know one of the guys he wrestles with, they go and do tournaments and stuff, and he was always like, "Hey, let's get Bo into this tournament. Let's get him in." So we'll see. Maybe someday we can get him into a tournament, or get him rolling with that a little bit.
What about you? Have you ever thought about hopping in to do a little jiu-jitsu?
I would love to. Again, when I did, I shouldn't say a lot, but I did a lot of like sparring with some of those guys. When Brock was training, I'd go over to the gym, and Shane was train with Sean Shirk and some of those guys, and it was a ton of fun. I'd wrestled my whole life, and I got tapped out probably a few too many times than I would have liked to by some of those guys that I thought I should kill. But but I don't have the time. Like, we're so busy with everything we have going on. But I would, I know I really enjoyed and loved it's an amazing workout too, man. I just love, like, I like to sweat. I like to work out and and figure stuff out. So I'd love to. I just, timing wise, maybe, who knows, maybe someday when I'm done coaching, I can get a chance to play around with it a little bit more.
Yeah. You can only be good at you can only be great at one thing, right?
Yeah, right.
Man, I know we're getting close to this. We're getting to this hour point. My last question for you is, looking back at your competition career, do you have a favorite win in particular that just stands out to you? Like, man, this is like a big moment for me, whatever it might have been. And then do you have maybe a particular loss that, we all hate losing, but at the same time, sometimes we look back at the losses we had and they gave us the best lessons that we needed at the time. So do you have like a favorite win and, a really beneficial loss that you look back on?
Yeah, I don't know when I look back and like a favorite win per se. I think like when I started out my freshman year, obviously, I was fortunate enough to win a title my junior year, and I think that's an easy one to say, like, was, one. But I look back at my freshman year, I started out with a lot of expectations, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I had a terrible first half of the year. I started out being ranked like 18th in the country. And then, halfway through the year, I wasn't even ranked anymore. I was so focused on wins, or, winning and losing and rankings and all this stuff. And then about halfway through the season, I finally said, like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to compete for 7 minutes, and again, I give a lot to my coaches, because they were able to, get this out of me and get me to understand, like, quit worrying about the things that don't matter. Just go out and compete for 7 minutes. Mm-hmm. And when I was able to do that, there was, a handful of guys that I got to wrestle, but I was wrestling, I think he was ranked 8th in the country at the time. He was actually a freshman too. And I was really nervous for the match for some reason, but my coaches calmed me down a little bit. I went out there and I wrestled probably the best I had ever wrestled. I think I was majoring the guy and ended up getting a fall at the end of the period. But again, I wasn't like focused on the wins or the losses. I was just out being me and competing and just letting things fly. And that was kind of the one match that I think really turned things around for me. And it was like, okay, I don't have to worry about all this other stuff. I can just go out and compete and wrestle as hard as I can. And if my hand gets raised at the end, it gets raised. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Right. So, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest ones that really turned the corner for me. And then from there, things just kind of started rolling. You know what I mean? I was knocking off other guys kind of throughout the rest of the Big Ten season. And it was just, it was a lot of fun. And then obviously, like, again, there's the individual successes, but I think when I look back at my career as all the wins and the positive things that happened, I think when we won our first title in 2001 as a team, I'd give any of my individual accomplishments for what we were able to do in 2001 and 2002 and win back-to-back national titles. Like, I just think like it's so special. Obviously, you know, you train so hard for one thing as an individual, but to be able to do it together as a group and as a team, and, you know, the way we were able to do it, you know, we had 10 All-Americans. There's no other team in the country that's had all 10 guys at the national tournament become All-Americans. We were able to do it. We didn't have a finalist. We went 0-6. We had 6 guys in the semifinals. We went 0-6. And, but we huddled together at the hotel that next night, and we said, man, we can score a lot of points. It was actually against Iowa, who had won the last 6 championships, down in Carver Hawkeye in Iowa. So we had a chance to beat them there. And we all got together and like, hey, man, we can still do this. And we came back, had a morning round that was unbelievable. We, put a bunch of guys into third place and scored a bunch of points there and ended up winning a team title. And I think for all of us, like, none of us reached our goal individually, right? Mm-hmm. But we were able to do it as a team. And I think like that's the moment that I remember the most in my wrestling career as far as the accomplishments. So
that's cool.
Losses, obviously I would say my senior year, at the national tournament, just again, you look back on your career and it's like, okay, I've halfway through my freshman year, I figured it out. Right. But then now I won as a junior and I'm coming back trying to win another title. And for some reason, I put all those pressures back on myself that as a 19-year-old kid, that, 3 years prior to, I had figured it all out. But now here I am 4 years older and I'm supposed to know that, leave all this stuff out. And, I let some of that stuff get back, into my head, and I wasn't competing probably the way I needed to. But that's probably getting beat there in the quarterfinals my senior year is probably the one that bothers me the most.
Okay.
It's the mental side of it. That's what it was. It wasn't physical. It was all mental.
It's crazy how, like, and again, that as a coach, you try to get these guys to understand, like, it doesn't, like, match to match, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to win. Who cares in practice? Like, who cares if you win in practice, right? Like, you have to be trying stuff, you have to be able to take risks. You have to give yourself opportunities. You have to believe in the process. And, you can't control it anyway, right? Like, you can't control whether there's a bad call, whether something happens, whether he gets a takedown, but you can control your attitude and effort and going out there and competing for 7 minutes. And if you do that, it's usually going to take care of itself anyway, right? But if it doesn't, it's out of your control. You can't control it. So why let those things into your head? Obviously easier said than done, but
that's right.
That's awesome.
Well, it's the battle, man. It's because, like you said, once you get it in check, it can always creep back up into your noggin, right? If you're not careful.
100%.
That's it. It's hard. It's hard to. It's easier, probably. I guess you understand this better than most. It's easier to get to the top and stay on top, because I think the pressure is the big thing at that point.
Yeah, the climb 100% is not easier, because it's freaking tough too, right?
Sure.
But it's fun. It's enjoyable.
Gotcha.
Once you're sitting up top there and you're a marked man, I don't know, for some reason, it's a lot harder to come back and do it again. And really, like, and our coaches always try to tell us, like, you're not defending anything. You know what I mean? You're trying to go win another one.
That's right.
Stick to the stuff that you did prior to that, right? But yeah, that's definitely the battle that we all fight as competitors.
Yeah. Right. Trust the process.
Yeah.
There it
Absolutely.
is. Coach, appreciate your time. Is there, if people want to see what you're up to, where can they do that?
Yeah, obviously we're having a great year. Our guys are wrestling, competing extremely well. We're ranked 3rd in the country right now.
Amazing.
Guys have just been wrestling really, really well. We have a fun group of guys to watch wrestle. They're out there scoring points, getting after it. Obviously, we're excited about the season. We're really fortunate. We got an opportunity to have Gable Steveson come back and wrestle for us again, try to win a 3rd title. So that's been a super positive thing. But man, we just have a really fun, exciting group of men who are going out there competing, scoring points. So yeah, follow us at Gopher Wrestling. Gopher Wrestling. That's our tag on Twitter or whatever. Yeah, if you guys want to come follow us, it's an exciting product we're putting out there right now. So.
Yeah, it's some fun stuff. And him coming back, is that something that was unexpected? And what was that like? How did that change the dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of in the works for a while. We didn't know, we had to do some things with his eligibility and some of that stuff and get some waivers with the Olympic year and COVID year and all that stuff. So you never know if it's going to happen for sure or not, but we're able to work through that process. And yeah, I mean, he's been great. I think for him, he's loved it. He's had so much success in kind of everything that he's done. And I think for him, the last couple of years, he's been out kind of doing things on his own, and being back part of a team and the excitement of that for him has been, I think, a really positive thing. And then obviously for our guys, you have the best guy in the world coming back and he's going to join your team. We already had a really good team.
Yeah.
But to be able to bring him back and have him back, the excitement he's brought around the program and what he can help our young guys, he's one of the best competitors out there with his mindset and the way he looks. Obviously he's a superstar, but his mindset is unbelievable. The way he looks at competition and competes. And so it's great to have him around our young guys to learn from and develop from as well too.
Yeah. It's very cool. I mean, that his Olympic win was, incredible.
Crazy,
right? I mean, it's about as close as you can get to the buzzer, right?
Yeah. It was
unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
And then coming back and I don't know, like it's just interesting to do that. I mean, really, I think in wrestling, that's probably, the highest accolade, win the Olympics, right? I mean, and then to come back and then wrestle again, be in that room and grind with everybody else. I think that's a cool, that says a lot about him. It's interesting. It's an interesting thing to see. Awesome. Well, awesome, Coach. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, brother. Yeah. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. A lot of good stuff there towards the end. I just want to bring attention to it because it was one of the things that stood out to me. Did you hear the part? And if you've listened to me for long enough, you've heard me talk about this. Like he said, is like one of the pivotal moments in his competing was when he, was told, just go out there and compete for 7 minutes. Don't worry about, winning, losing, whatever. Just go. And that's something where for me, I had that moment as well in my jiu-jitsu, my wrestling. Well, not my wrestling. I was still a basket case there. But in my jiu-jitsu, I had it in my jiu-jitsu. And it was one of those things where when you tap into that mindset where you don't care, you'll care at the end of it, but during it, you don't care about whether you're winning, you're losing. You're like, I'm just trying to go. That unlocks a side of yourself that allows you to get so much more from yourself, right? It's so hard to do anything if you're so fixated on the outcome. It makes you rigid. A lot of times I use the comparison to dates, right? Like for instance, I just, I remember being a young man and being very insecure, go on a date, and I'm just, on this date, and I'm like, see, maybe there's this pretty girl sitting across from me. And I'm like, man, I really hope she's into me. I hope she likes me. This sort of thought process is going through my head. As I got older, more secure in myself, didn't care really, I would go into the date. I'm like, I don't really care if you don't like me. If you do, great. If you don't, well, whatever, like there's other people out there that'll enjoy my company. And, again, what's strange is by being very relaxed like that, I was always more charismatic. The dates always went better. And a lot of times I had more second dates afterwards because, I wasn't going into it with any preconceived notion of how I wanted things to go. If I wanted you to like me, I was just there for the ride. I was there to enjoy the moment with that person. Yeah. And if it went great, then great. If it didn't, then, whatever. Like there's other people I can date. And, and so again, it happens the same thing with jiu-jitsu, where if you go into these matches, if you go into these roles and you're so fixated on, I got to win this thing or whatever, I mean, like you're going to be so rigid and fragile.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get upset every time you lose. You won't be able to take chances. You won't be able to develop your skill and, expand your abilities, and even see, you won't be able to see the best version of yourself through that. And I've seen that happen to so many people. And even like he said, which I say it all the time, practice doesn't count. You don't win in practice. Yeah. we're training in practice. And so hopefully some stuff was stuck away with you guys from listening to the podcast.
I think some of the best competition advice that you can get, and you get it from, obviously, Chewy. You've shared it numerous times on the podcast, and you've shared it with, us when we're competing. And then you see a guy that was a high level wrestler, one at the high school level, the collegiate level, and also is one of the best coaches out there. Obviously, through his accolades, you can see that, and he shares the same advice. And I think that's crucial. If you can do that, if you can just let go of that outcome, and just do your thing, play your game. I think that's just the best advice you can get. And if you can utilize that, if you can really truly do that, I think you'll be successful in your tournaments.
Yep. But just as a reminder, just like he said in the podcast, it's a practice, right? He didn't say it's a practice. I say it's a practice.
It is
because like he said, he got it out of the way, and then later on that sucker creeped right back into his head and messed him up. And so, when if you sort of get control of your ego or your nervousness or whatever, don't think that it's like over. These things are like, it's like watching a TV series or like a comic book or something where the bad character, the villain, always comes back. They'll be back. You
they're
give
lingering
it time.
Back here. They're always waiting to pounce.
The Joker's waiting to break out of the Gotham jail or whatever, and they're going to be back, and they're going to be ready to attack. Your ego issue that you had when you were a white belt that got snuffed out, it might be slumbering for a while, but then all of a sudden you get your black belt and there it pops up again. Or you have some anxiety about competing, you get rid of that when you're a blue belt, and then all of a sudden, you got a gym of people looking at you getting ready to compete, and boom, it pops up again. You just never know what is going to happen. So, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast and got something from it. So guys, thanks for being here. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Grapple Science. If you guys haven't checked them out, check them out. They make a really good supplement called Cognition. It's to help give you more focus for training, to be a sort of, I wouldn't call it like a pre-workout or an energy booster so much. It's like, if you're like exhausted and sleepy, it's not going to basically do a complete 180. But if you're like, if you're good, you're already focused, you're there, but then you take the supplement, like, at least for me, I get like a little, it turns it up for me. All of a sudden I get even more dialed in. And maybe if I'm a little sluggish from like a long day of like computer work or something, it's like I can take that supplement and it'll dial me in just a little bit more and help me get a little bit more for myself. And so it's a non-stimulant based supplement. So again, if you guys want to check it out, you don't have to worry about it giving you the jitters or anything like that, like drinking too much coffee or taking some crazy, energy drink. But check them out at grapplescience.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. Also, thanks to Charlotte's Web for being a longtime sponsor. Again, CBD is a great supplement. There's a lot of anecdotal benefits that you can look up from people out there. A lot of people have used the supplements for years because it's not FDA regulated. None of that stuff can be like, hey, this is what it does. But a lot of people talk about the experiences that they've had, and again, one of the experiences that it tends to help with the, overall stress. I know a lot of people that tend to use it for that. And then for me, I tend to use it to help with my sleep. I think that it helps improve my sleep cycles. I feel like it's done that. And so it's a supplement that I use on the regular basis. And so if you guys want to check it out and try it for yourself, go to their website at charlesweb.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. And again, you can check out their new CBN supplement, which is a little different CBD, but CBN is supposed to be a little bit more effective in regards to helping with sleep. Also, guys, if you want to check out Epic Roll and maybe get some new jiu-jitsu gear for your training, you can do that by going to epicrollbjj.com. You can use the promo code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. Personally, I'm one of those dudes where anytime if I need like a little bit of motivation or need to kind of like shake things up a little bit, one of the things that I'll do is I'll get some new gear. I don't know what it is. It's like getting a new gi, getting a new rash guard, whatever it is. Whenever I get that stuff, I just get excited. I want to go train. I want to go break it in. I remember when I got my new Jiu-Jitsu gear made by Epic Roll, which will be out in the near future. Like I had 5 different colors of rash guards, 2 different colors of shorts. I wanted to go wear them immediately, And so again, if you guys want to get some new stuff, check out epicrollbjj.com. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you join up, you'll get access to a bunch of different perks. I'll let you go to the website and you can look at the perks, see if you're interested in them. Again, it's at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Very inexpensive price, lots of cool stuff that you get from it, and you support the podcast, which again, it's a win-win. And if you guys want to get my daily email and get access to that, as well as the Focused Jiu-Jitsu ebook that I give away, which goes into ideas on basically focused rolling during your open mats, similar to his idea on sparring. If you guys don't have control of your training, you don't have the ability to dictate how things go, then this can be a way to sort of direct your open rolling to be a little bit more focused and dialed in to get more from your training. And then that is at my website at jujitsu.net/join. And so guys, with that said, thanks for being here on the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself, and we'll talk to you next time.